Hey everybody, it's Mike Young with aPlantBasedDiet.org, lifestyle nutritionist, and we're on chapter 19, titled Self-Abuse is Legal. Now, what am I talking about? Self-abuse is legal. Well, unfortunately, I think if you walked up to somebody on the street and you'd say, is it legal to abuse yourself? People would probably think about like cutting yourself, right? Trying to commit suicide, just doing something incredibly reckless and dangerous, I don't know, like jackass or whatever. I think those some of the, or even jumping motorcycles, right? Like long distance motorcycle jumping, that type of thing when you crash, and people have died doing that. People have died doing a lot of things that are incredibly dangerous. Some of those things are legal. I think that in most cases, correct me if I'm wrong, you can write down below, trying to kill yourself is not legal and it should be prevented at all costs. I think everyone would agree on that. And self-harm, like slitting your wrists or whatever, also, I don't think that's legal either. And I think that should be prevented at all costs. I think everyone would agree on that. Now, these are obvious signs of someone trying to do harm to themselves intentionally, right? Unfortunately, what's going on right now with the state that we're in with our food system, our healthcare or sick care system, and the habits of standard American diet, what we all kind of try to do, most of the stuff that's available for us to eat in general is self-harming. It really is. And I hate to say it, but that's why I think that we should be able to live to 150. It shouldn't be a problem. But literally everywhere you go, including, and I'm going to lump in literally almost every plant-based and vegan restaurant, and it's so great that they don't use animal products, but it's self-abuse when you voluntarily consume that food, because on some level you're harming yourself. And believe me, it's a lot worse than you think it is. It's not like, oh, well, I'm making the better choice going to a plant-based restaurant. No, I mean, yeah, you're not eating the protein that is probably known to cause cancer. You're not getting cholesterol. In most cases, you're not getting, you're getting lower saturated fat unless you're eating coconut oil or something like that, or anything that has coconut oil in it. But that's only part of the issues. As you see with the ridiculous number of chapters, we're almost up to 20 now on this book, and I haven't even gotten into all the specifics. There are so many things, so many levels that we are constantly harming ourselves 3 times a day at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It is self-abuse, and it's legal. Have you ever heard, look, I just did 2 chapters before these on oil and salt. And I have some videos that link to when you go to healthyveganfood.info and you watch Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn of the Cleveland Clinic's videos for hours on end, explaining in fine detail why you should never have 1 single drop of oil. Well, the takeaway from that is that even 1 single drop of oil is self-abuse. You are purposely and knowingly harming your body. It's a slow and painful death as opposed to a quick, well, actually, it's a less painful and slow death, but it is very painful, rather than the extreme pain and quickness of trying to kill yourself or cutting yourself. And maybe that's why. I guess the quick and more painful ways are illegal, but the slow and not quite as painful ways, although actually if you add up the cumulative amount of pain over time, I think the slow methods are even more painful, like by far, than just offing yourself. And I don't think you should ever do that. But I'm just thinking that the cumulative amount of pain in there, and that's legal. That's totally legal. I haven't heard of anybody making laws against this. If you know of any laws out there that say this is not legal, please let me know. This is one of the reasons why there's a problem with the healthcare system, the sick care system, is that there are either no incentives in place to do the right thing, or the incentives are so low, they're so minuscule that even if you follow them, you're still not really getting that much benefit out of them, and there's not enough incentive for you to even follow them. It's not worth it. It's not enough for people, okay? Because if it was, then 80% of the illnesses wouldn't be due to lifestyle choices, poor lifestyle choices, and only 20% due to traumatic, events, emergency type of situations. It would be flipped around, all right, if we had the right incentives in place. We don't. So not only is self-abuse legal, but for the most part, there is very little incentives in place to not self-abuse. There should be, even if self-abuse was legal, which it is, and was never made illegal, there should still be massive incentives in place, in my opinion, to not self-abuse. All right, that's what is also not here. So on a couple of big levels here that we've just gone over, there is nothing in society right now in 2022 that I'm aware of that helps in these areas to get a real fix in there and solve those problems. If you think that there is something like that, by all means, please comment below. I'd love to hear from you. I want to hear from you. And then maybe I'll learn something from you, the viewer, and I'll make another chapter. But the way we live right now, things are so out of balance. Things are so out of whack. The people's priorities are so, I don't know. Why does nobody consider eating garbage? Why does no one consider eating garbage as self-abuse in 2022? That's what I don't understand. Because like the last two chapters, actually, eating oil. Oil is just total garbage. All right. Sodium is it's another form of garbage. It's like rocks. Okay. We're knowingly doing harm. And because of the fact that it doesn't happen instantaneously, although if you dive into some deep research here, you might find that, shortly before somebody has a heart attack or a stroke, they've had a really high fat meal. So it may not be as far removed as you think. It's just that people aren't looking for the connections. People are so enamored with the food as if there's some kind of romantic aspect to eating the standard American diet. It's perverted, and it's like a really, I'd say either it's a really bad relationship. Let's put that way. It's almost like a codependent relationship, or a relationship that it's not a healthy relationship, okay, with food that people have. They're not looking at food in the right way. You've got to look at the wrong food for what it is. By itself, it's nothing. But the minute you stick it into your mouth, it becomes a form of self-abuse. You've got to internalize this. Like the last chapter I just did was on forming good habits, developing good habits. Until you convince yourself of the fact that eating, even if it was the way you were taught by loving people, right? Eating that way, until you convince yourself that eating that way is self-abuse, there's going to be too much incentive for you to continue that. Because like if you just witnessed somebody abusing somebody on the street, or even hurting an animal, right? Beating an animal, you would stop it. You'd say, like, don't abuse yourself. Don't abuse that animal. Don't abuse that person. But this abuse that I'm talking about is going on all day long with most people. It's self-abuse. People are doing it in front of others. No one's stopping them. And if someone does try to stop them, they're viewed as some kind of freak, or something's wrong with them. Like, that's where the blame goes. That's why I keep saying this is a psychological issue. If people really have that kind of reaction, if someone was to stop, like, don't eat that cheeseburger, even if it's an Impossible Beyond Meat, a fake vegan product, okay? Unless it's a mushroom burger, that's okay. That's a whole plant, right? But stop somebody from eating that. Don't harm yourself. Don't do it. You think there's something really wrong with that person, wouldn't you? Because that's just how society is right now. Self-abuse, most forms of self-abuse that people actually suffer from and are victims of are completely legal. And you may not have ever thought about this, but hopefully I'm checking all the boxes off here on the list, and I'm kind of weaving this all together into a way that you can see. Maybe you have to stand outside society sometimes to look at it this way, because if you're just in it and this is all you've known, and you don't want to think, and especially don't want to think outside the box, you're never going to get this. And by the way, if you think that somebody needs to hear this who doesn't understand this, which is most people, please share it with people. Tag them somewhere in the comments. Do whatever it takes, okay? Because it is so important, like we talked about earlier in this V-book, to have an open mind. If you don't understand the dynamic and what's going on in society, you won't ever have the capability to open your mind, all right? Because I know everyone feels strongly. There's like an emotional component when, like I said, if you were to watch someone abuse somebody, or if you were to watch someone abuse an animal, you would get so upset. Or even if you heard of something happen, you would get so upset at that person, you would go say something to them, or you would stop them. But if you saw it, you would stop them from doing it. But that dynamic has not entered the food system. That dynamic has not entered our rituals of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You know, I've seen some places, actually, I shouldn't say there's absolutely no progress, because there is some progress. I think like New York City, for instance, and I think Montgomery County, Maryland, among other places. This is a while ago. This is decades ago, 20 years ago. They banned trans fats because everyone's like, oh, trans fats. There's nothing good about trans fats. So the most progressive and unfortunately getting into politics, liberal, right, regulation loving areas, they said, if you're a restaurant, even if you're McDonald's or your Chipotle, if your regular recipe has trans fats in it, well, as a prepared food, you're not allowed to, in a restaurant environment, you're not allowed to sell that to a consumer. And you can see these signs if you go into restaurants. They should, I'm pretty sure they're still there unless those laws were repealed. And if you guys know about that, please let me know in the comments. But they're required to be posted, and they're also required to not have any trans fats in any of the foods. I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't go to a grocery store and buy an Oreo off the shelf, which you can, which is loaded with trans fats. Okay, so it didn't cover everything, but it was a start. Okay, and of course, most areas don't have it, and may never have it. I don't know, but think about the concept. The concept was, all right, these trans fats are so bad, and they have little to no positive benefits, that we are not going to allow people to self-harm anymore. We're not going to allow the self-abuse. I don't care if you let your taste buds love this stuff. You have to reformulate the stuff that you sell if you want to sell in our areas. That's why they're usually more expensive areas, more liberal areas. People are used to paying higher prices for things. They can absorb that, right? That's how these things usually happen. The regulations kind of trickle down in those ways. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just wish that self-abuse was illegal. That's what I wish. I don't know how that would have to go, but most of the food-like products would probably be removed from the shelves, and we'd all be shopping at organic, chemical-free produce stands. That's what would end up happening. It's kind of crazy, but that's how deep we are in this. That's why it hasn't really changed. That's why I guess someone was happy. Oh, look, you got the trans fats banned. We're all good now, right? But if that was the case, then cancer deaths would have dropped dramatically in the last 20 years, and heart attack, stroke, right? All these things, diabetes, high blood pressure, all kinds of things that are related. And actually, I had to make one chapter where I just rattle off the list of things that are likely going to be improved by eating the right food. That's another chapter. So it may be that was a bad thing in a way, because it kind of placated some people to say, look, we're doing something. But the real problem, which is all the other food pretty much, is no one's doing anything about it. It's still totally illegal. You see it everywhere. Oh my gosh. I mean, every store you go into, that's why it's so hard to maintain this lifestyle and develop good habits. Why I need this book. You need this book. If you're out there watching, thank you for watching it. Please share it with others. I'm telling you, it's needed. That's why we have our nonprofit. We need to educate people. We're in such a poor state of health right now. You know, this country, I think, has the United States of America, where I'm broadcasting this from, in 2012. I'm 52, and I'm not taking any maintenance pharmaceuticals. I don't have any conditions that need to be maintained that are disease-like, right? Which is great. And it's because I'm being so strict, okay? We need to get the word out. We're educational. We exist to educate people because other people are not going to do it. So please share this video. That's why we're trying to make it available for everybody. The content is free, and you can just share it. Just tell people to go look. And of course, the goal here is to get out of this sick cycle and get to a point where people realize what they're doing, even if it means saying that any form of self-harm is illegal. Because like I said, if you were to stop and think about it, I just said, hey, any form of self-harm is illegal. Most people would say, okay, yeah, right, because they're thinking about suicide, thinking about cutting. But it's epidemic in society that almost everyone is self-harming all the time. It's just where we live, right? It's just the world we live in. And of course, all these large organizations, large corporations, large industries, they don't want that to change. They're making money off of all this stuff. It's all a big money maker. They don't want it to change. So you as an individual have to do it. And our technique, which is the only technique we have, is to tell you the truth and to tell you what's going on. And hopefully you can push aside the life lifetime of brainwashing you've had and recognize that there is a better way and it's totally within your control. Vote with your dollar, just make the right choices and stop harming yourself. Stop harming yourself. You're only going to get benefits. It's not going to be like I said before, like people say, oh, you're eating cardboard for the rest of my life. And I don't want to be in misery, deny myself of everything. That is like the most negative way to view, I guess, because you're not self-harming anymore. But yet you still have all these excuses like that. Like those things are worse than constant self-harm and constant suffering and sickness from diseases, constant, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me now? I've got to go see somebody. They've got to give me something. I even talked to people recently and said, well, you know, look, my doctor, you know, doesn't necessarily just push the pharmaceuticals on me, but, you know, are they cured? Has the doctors ever said that you can reverse your disease condition, whatever disease it might be? And the answer is no. And then, you know, I even offered to people, look, I'm a lifestyle nutritionist. I'll talk to you. Let's talk. I'm not going to, there's no cost for you because I know you. Okay. Even though I would usually charge somebody else a fee. And even with that, they're like, no, I'm at a good place now. Like everyone thinks, oh, in this balance point, because the doctors and the medical system, they all say, well, for disease, you can just get to your balance point, your spot where, you know, it's not totally out of control, but you're never going to be healed. That's the balance point. Okay. And people actually feel a sense of comfort and relief when they're at that spot, which is just crazy to me, that is the goal for people. But, you know, our system, our healthcare system doesn't offer you any guarantees or promise of healing. That's why I'm saying, because you know why? Because everyone is self-abusing at breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day for the most part. That's what's happening with almost everyone. So be different. Don't do that. Just choose to not abuse yourself. Thank you for listening to this. I know I'm so sorry I had to say all this in a chapter. Because like I said, people are so concerned about, oh, this abuse, that abuse, abuse of this, abuse of that. Abuse. When almost all these people, it's funny because like I say, people usually talk about themselves. You hear the people that talk about abuse this, abuse. They're probably the worst self-abusers of all. With the food that they're eating, the life that they're living, the punishment they're giving their body on a daily basis. That's why it's true. I wish it wasn't true that people that talk about these things are doing it to themselves. I'm saying it to you in this book because I want you to get out of that pattern. The worst thing that's happening is a self-abuse. The absolute worst thing. The self-abuse leads to all the other forms of abuse, if you ask me. Those are all an offshoot. Okay. Like if you want to know about why do people get so angry and they're so mean or whatever. Well, what about the hormones from the animals who were scared to death when you slaughtered them and lived their whole lives in fear, right? What about that karma from those food that becomes you on a cellular level? You ever thought about that? That's what I'm saying. Like what we're talking about here is not like, I don't need to go after other forms of abuse. If you just stop the self-abuse, in all likelihood, just because of the effect of either karma or the cellular makeup of your body, the hormones, because these animals, all they know about is reproducing, and of course they're constantly inseminated. It's totally outside their control. They're upset. Their babies are taken from them. They're extremely upset. Don't you think that has some type of repercussions at the end point of that food, which is the human behavior? If the humans are consuming all the food and the food is making them up, all that bad stuff I just told you about is making up people. That's the form of like, it's so this takes the abuse to another level. I know I didn't even think I'd get to this level in this chapter, but it's not just, okay, I'm eating some substances that I know are going to like somehow on a chemical level or molecular level hurt me, because that's pretty straightforward. That's one level. But like I said, this is another level. It's like you have done so much emotional damage to these animals, and you are taking products that are not even designed for your species. And some of these animals, they're animals. There's a reason why they're called animals and not humans. They don't have the self-control. And then you wonder why humans behave the way that they do. Like, I don't. I think a lot of these are other forms of abuse that are either exacerbated and possibly even caused by the initial self-abuse of eating the animal products and eating the wrong foods, eating the things that are not healthy for you. All right, I know this, like I said, this went a lot deeper than I even thought it would when I first started off. saying I'm going to do this as my next chapter. Let me know your thoughts on any of these levels of the self-abuse and how it may extend to like solving other forms of abuse that are not self-abuse, that are perpetuated by others, other humans that do self-abuse, right? Because if you're self-abusing yourself, you're just gonna garbage in, garbage out type of thing, right? As I said, the food is garbage, but if it's all this abuse you're putting in from the animals, that abuse is going to be going out in your actions. Okay. So have you ever heard the thing like pushing my buttons, like you make me so angry, whatever? This stuff could be all the food that you're eating. If you wonder why that's you, or you can't control it, and you're constantly abusing yourself with animal products during the day, just think about it. I'm not saying this is 100% for sure, but I'm saying there's probably a pretty darn good correlation here. And you may have never thought about this before. I've thought about this, but until I made this chapter here, I don't know if I've ever connected all of this abuse together, all these forms of abuse together in one video, and dealing with we may be dealing here with the root cause of all abuse. All right. I know that in talking to Dr. Tuttle, I just did a recent video on the nonprofit channel, aPlantBasedDiet.org. Check it out with Dr. Tuttle. It's titled Veganism in all capital letters. And he always talked about, we do so many events with him in Florida in the event season, which is November through March of every year, outdoor events. And he talks about basically the major problem of human society is animal agriculture. That is the root cause of almost every problem in society. And, this abuse, this problem of abuse, this chapter of abuse, it's probably been me just hanging around Dr. Tuttle, listening to what he says about this thing. Now I finally get it, I suppose. I think most people don't get it, but it's two level, like we said. It's the self-abuse of knowingly doing harm to yourself. And then you're transferring, if you're eating animal products, the abuse of the animals to others in your life. That karma, those feelings, all those things, because those are becoming you at the cellular level. So this is bad. This is terrible, and it needs to end. And I hope that you will share this message with others, and in hopes of doing that. And that's enough for this chapter. I think we've said all we can say about it. And I hope you have a great day despite this chapter. And make sure you're doing something right. Do not self-abuse. Thank you. Bye.